In our previous video, we completed most of the base model elements that we needed. Those included the walls, the doors, all the items on the interior, and we finally concluded with adding the slabs and our roof. So what we've got is, when we look at our view, if we go back to our project navigator in here, and remember that most of our drawing has occurred in our constructs. So we have a basement, main, site, and upper. In 2 videos ago, we were doing all the site elements, which includes the driveway, the roads, and so on. So what we've ended up with is we've ended up with a 3-dimensional model that, at least in its basic form, we should be able to develop some elevations. So what we're going to do in this video is we're going to go ahead and we're going to use AutoCAD Architecture, one of the features in AutoCAD Architecture, to help develop elevations. Now I'm going to go ahead and go back out from the conceptual style that we've got. So I need to get out of that. Let's go to current, and I'm going to go switch to 2D wireframe. And if you notice, right now we're in the view. In order for us to generate the elevations that we want, we're going to do it quite differently than what we did with base AutoCAD, where we actually had our base drawings, all the walls, all the lines that represented walls, and then we would project them down and we would generate an elevation from that. All of that has, to one degree or another, been automated using AutoCAD Architecture. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead, and our file structure right now includes constructs, views, and eventually we're going to be doing sheets. So part of our construction document set is going to include sheets that would include the elevations of the residence that we're doing, in this case the northern home. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and generate a new view drawing, which we can then bring the elevations we generate on that view drawing, we're going to bring them onto the sheets. We'll do that in subsequent videos after that. So the first thing that we're going to do is we want to basically form a view drawing, a DWG, under our Views tab, that contains all 3 elements. Almost identical to the model, but we're going to go ahead and create a separate view for our elevations. We could technically use the same view assembly or composite that we have in here, but for the sake of identifying it as a separate item, we're going to go ahead and create another view drawing. For that, we can take the existing model, we're going to right click on it, and if you look at some of the options in the pop-up, one of them is Save Drawing as View. So we're going to go to General, and this one we're going to call Elevations. We're going to go to Next. As you can tell, we have all 4 levels included on there. We're going to go Next, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to highlight Basement, Main, Site, and Upper. Then we're going to go Finish. And what you can see in here is that we now have a separate drawing, which is called Elevations, right here. And that is our current and active file that we're working on. I'm going to go ahead and save it. And what we're going to do is we're now going to start developing our elevations in a unique way that we had not done previously using AutoCAD. For this, I'm going to go ahead and turn off my grid. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and, on our ribbon, if we go to the Home tab right in here, and we go all the way to the right, we got a panel here that says Section Elevation. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go, and on that panel we're going to select Elevation Line. I'm going to show you what happens. Now, I don't need to show the entire site. What our elevations are basically going to show is going to be showing the part that we are most concerned with in terms of elevations, which is the building itself. So what we're going to do is we're going to select a point somewhere along the front yard here, and we're going to draw a line from left to right, and we're going to take it to the extent of our house and maybe slightly off to each side. So I'm going to go ahead and left click with that selected elevation line, ask for the start point, and I'm going to click right here, I'm going to put on my ortho and I'm going to click all the way to the right and carry it just a little bit beyond my walkway on this side. I'm going to left click in there, and if you notice, we have what's called an elevation line formed. And if you look at the direction of the arrow, it is pointing towards our building, our residence. Now if I had done it from right to left, it would be pointing down. The next thing you want to do is you want to go ahead and highlight it, and what you get is you get a box which shows the extents of what you're going to show in the elevation. So this arrow allows you to pull it in or to pull it out. What you want to make sure is that you include the entire portion that you want to show in elevation. Once highlighted, what we can do is right click it again, and we're going to go to Generate 2D Elevation, and then it asks you, let's go ahead and select the elevation line and then specify the insertion point that we want for our elevations. So I'm going to go ahead and left click right at this point, and immediately what we get is we get an elevation shown in here. Now this box down at the bottom represents our soil. This is this large green area that we have in there. Now one of the things that we can do eventually is we're going to be editing this so that we can begin to highlight, get line weights, add details to it that we want to do. And part of this is going to happen both in the model, and then we'll be able to do some line work in here. So let's go ahead and let's go, and we're going to do the right side, the rear, and then the left side of the house in here. We're going to follow pretty much the same format. We're going to go to the panel which says Section Elevation. It's under the Home tab. Click Elevation Line, and in this case we're going to go from the bottom to the top, and that is going to allow us the arrow to point toward the house. We're going to highlight it. As you can tell right here, we would be missing the back half of the house, so I'm going to extend it a little bit further to about that point right there. And with it highlighted, I'm going to right click. I'm going to say Generate 2D Elevation. It's asking me for my insertion point. For now, I'm going to go ahead and put it just right next to it. And there it is. Now, just for the sake right now of lining them up, I'm going to go ahead and bring it down to sort of match what we've got right there. I'm going to do two more. Let's do the rear elevation. Now, all of this is modifiable. So one of the things that we're going to do is I'm going to show you what happens if we modify our model or modify our constructs and bring them back into here, and I'll show you how it would update our elevations. But first of all, let's go ahead and finish off with the rest of our elevations. I'm going to go from here to here. It's going in the right direction that way. I'm going to pull this up just a little bit further. With it highlighted, right click, Generate 2D Elevation. It's asking for my insertion point. I'm going to put that about down here. There it is. So that's our rear elevation. Pretty simple. I'm going to move it up a little bit more. And I'm going to go ahead and now do my last elevation line. I'm going to go from this point down to about here. Highlight it. Make sure it gets the entire. With it highlighted, right click, Generate 2D Elevation. It's asking for its insertion point. I'm going to put that right down there. And I'm going to go ahead and move this up. And let's just leave it just a little bit more to the left. So what we've got is 4 rudimentary elevations that we would need to modify. Now, if you recall in our constructs and in our levels that we did, upper, main, and so on, we work with what's called styles. Example, you have a door style, and a style is a flush door or a swing door and it has a certain size. Well, the same thing applies to these 2D elevations. This is actually what we would call an elevation style. So it's a 2D section elevation style, and you can change what you can see, you can change the display properties and so on. One of the things that I definitely want to change on this is going to be the hatch pattern for the brick. I don't want to see that. Now, we could change surface hatch patterns on our 3D elements just by going down here and clicking here. I showed that in my last video, but if I do that here, notice it does not affect at all our elevations. So I'm going to make sure this is on also. But watch what happens. If I highlight it, I can right click one of my 2D elevations, and I can, on the pop-up window, I'm going to go down here and I'm going to go to Edit 2D Elevation Section Style. On this window that pops up, we can make certain changes to the display properties of that elevation. So I'm going to go to Style Override, left click on that, and what I want to see is I want to hide my surface hatch line work. So I'm going to go highlight that, and I'm going to do OK onto that. Now let's see if there's anything else that we can change on here. Now again, most of the display components that we have in here are not clearly defined on what they are, especially when we get beyond this point. The out-of-date markers, subdivisions are just general. So we're not quite sure what part some of these things that we may want to remove. So if we take a look at some of these items, there's not really much else that we can do. We're just going to do OK. I'm going to do OK. And as you can see right there, that has been adjusted. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to save my drawing in here. And for now what I want to do is I want to get rid of anything that is below our ground line right here. Now luckily our elevation mark point is able to delete anything that was happening in the basement. We cannot see it. And when we draw our elevations, we would not see that anyways. So what we can do is highlight our 2D elevation section style. We're going to right click again, and this time we're going to modify it by going to in the pop-up window, line work. We're going to go to edit, and what we're going to do right now is what it's done is, whereas before when we highlighted, you remember everything lit up just like here. Okay, notice how it's all one element. But in this one where we've done our modifications, if we highlight it, you can take a look at these items right in here. We can actually delete those items. So let's try that again. Highlight this. Let's go ahead and we are going to delete that. I'm going to do the same thing in here. Now I need to finish this before I go to the next one. If you notice, we got an Edit In Place Line Work tab that opened up the minute that I went to line work. And what I need to do is I need to finish this. So I'm going to finish, and it's going to keep those changes into there. Now it's all back to one element. I'm going to repeat the process here. Okay, so even if I did this, I could go to Edit Style, I can refresh, Edit Live Section, Edit Merge. That's for the line work. So with that highlighted, I could right click and get the same commands out of here, or I can do it from the ribbon. I'm going to go to Edit, and I'm going to highlight these here, and I'm going to delete. Now I'm going to go ahead and finish that one. I'm going to do the same thing in here. Go to Edit. Here I'm going to delete. Go up to Finish. I'm going to Edit. And I'm going to delete. And I'm going to go to Finish. So in a matter of about 5 to 10 minutes, we've actually generated 4 separate elevations. So for now, what I'm going to do is just move this up a little bit like that. And I'm going to move this and line it up so it's lined up with that one right there. Now these are obviously not complete. There is no variation in line weight and so on. It's a style right now, but there are some things that we may want to change. So let's see some of the things, and I'll show you how that works. One example of what's missing from our models is our chimney that is coming up out of the roof. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to show you how we can actually edit our construct, save it to our view, and then we should be able to see this modify. So what we need to do is let's go to our construct. Let's go to our upper construct right here, and this is the part of the chimney that would go up through the roof. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to find a layer and see if we have a layer that is A. Let's see if we have something for a chimney, a fire hatch, a fire hearth. And if we don't have it, what we're going to want to do is we're going to create a separate layer for it. Okay, it looks like I don't have one on there. So let's go ahead and click on our layer manager. And what we can do is let's go ahead and stay in the same family that we were on where it says a fire. I'm going to go ahead and highlight that. I'm going to create a new layer in there. I'm going to call A dash fire dash, let's call it CH. We could do CHMN or CHMY or chimney. It's got to be 4 characters. We can leave it at that same color. It's going to be continuous. And in this case, since we're going to be using it on elevations and we're going to be making modifications to it, let's go ahead and just leave it as our continuous line type with a line weight of 0.15. Let's set it as our current layer. I'm going to close that out and I'm ready to draw right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first figure out what the distance is from here to the outside of this wall. Okay, so that's a total of 6 inches. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and draw a rectangle at this point, and I'm going to offset it 6 inches. This would represent the framing, and I'm going to go ahead and erase that one line that we did. So this is going to represent the framing that is going to go up through the roof at this size. Now, one thing is I don't want to be able to see it right here. In other words, when I bring this construct in for the construction documents, this is really unrealistic because this is only happening above the roof. So what we need to do is we need to vertically move this up so that we will not visibly see it. So let's go ahead and let's go to an isometric view, at least to start with. And I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to use the move command, select that, and I'm going to go ahead and move it up. In this case, we know we were drawing it down at the base. I'm going to go ahead and move it up 8'2". It's going to be to about the top of the wall. So what we can do now is, since we're still going to be able to see it, how do we control that, and how are we not going to be able to see it in our final drawing? Well, what's one of the reasons why we created its own layer? Because now, if we wanted to, we could easily turn that layer on or off. So right now it's the current layer, so we're going to still keep working with it. I'm going to go ahead and change to isometric drawing. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take that closed polyline because it's a rectangle, and I'm going to go ahead and use my solids panel. Now, since I started a new session, I need to go to my show tabs, go to solids, click on that, and I'm going to extrude. And I'm going to go ahead and extrude for right now. I'm going to go ahead and say 12 feet. Now that may be a little bit too high, but that's something that we can easily adjust. So I'm going to go back to my top view in here. And again, because this would not allow me to actually drag on the Z-plane, I'm going to go ahead and change my view on my views tab up in here, and I'm going to go to view right, and it's definitely a little bit too high. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that right here, and it happens to have a drag bar in there. Now I'm going to start pulling this down in this direction. As you notice, it does not want to move in that direction. So I'm going to use a different command. Now the minimum height that this should be, I'm going to go ahead and offset this 2 feet. Usually there's a code because of fireplaces where the top of the chimney wants to be a minimum of 2 feet higher than any point on the roof 10 feet away. I think this is going to be sufficient. That would mark it at from the peak, which may be more than 10 feet. but I think that's going to look pretty nice on that, and then we can add trim work on top of that. So how do I get this point? Remember, this is a 3D solid, right in there like that. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and take that out of there. How do I bring that down? So right now I can click on that, and you would think that we can just bring that down, which we can once we're in 3D. I think we were clicking that on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to undo what I just deleted, which was that line back there. I'm going to go back to my top. Actually, I'm going to go to my right side, and I'm going to take a measurement to see how far down I need to move this. So that says 3 foot 10 and 1/2. So I'm going to go back. And I'm going to grip this. And I'm going to go down. I'm going to type in 3 foot 10.5. And now we've got that down there. At this point, now I can go ahead and delete that. I want to make sure to go back to my view top. And I've got that located right there. If I wanted to later on for my construction documents on the sheet, like I mentioned before, I do not want to see that. That represents the outside of the framework above the roof, not on the upper floor. So what we want to do is go ahead and save this drawing. We're going to go back to either our main model right here. Let's see how that affects it first. Actually, we've got to go to our view. Go to Model 01. Let's see what that looks like. And there you can see that it's already included in the change there. Let's do a little 3D orbit. And that looks pretty good for now. Again, this is all basic elevations. We haven't added a lot of our trim work, a lot of our detail, but that looks pretty good. So let's see how that works with our elevations. Let's go to our elevations view, which is already open, and it tells us we need to reload our upper. So we've gone ahead and reloaded, and if we look at this in isometric view, you can tell that it is modified already. So if we were to switch this to conceptual, you can see that our fireplace is included in there, our chimney is included. But if you take a look at our elevations, they have not modified. So let's see what happens. How do we get this and update our elevations? Well, we're going to highlight one of our elevations. I'm going to right click, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to either refresh or regenerate. So let's see what happens when we refresh. There it is. We could have also done regenerate. It would ask us some additional questions. Let's go ahead and do it to the rear. Refresh. There it is. Now notice some lines are missing. Okay, this is going to be part of the line work that you're going to have to do later on. Let's go ahead and let's do it for this one. Right click, refresh. There it is. And then our last elevation, we're going to go refresh, and there it is. So what we're going to do is we're going to hold on to these elevations, and as we modify and refine and fine-tune our model, we're going to keep refreshing these till we get to a point where we are comfortable with it. We know that we're not going to be doing too much more to it to make it work, so that what we can do is then we will be exploding these elevations and modifying our line work. As an example, if you take a look at this elevation, it looks like this. By the time we do our trim work around our roof, it's going to be a little bit too tight. So how do we solve that problem? Well, if you recall on our model, before we had a conflict between the upper roof and the lower roof. Well, we have a little bit of a conflict in here. We might have some issues with flashing underneath to make sure no rain can get through that or water penetration at those points. So it would probably be a good idea to go ahead and lower the pitch of this just a little bit more. So for that, we need to go back to our main level. We need to probably highlight all of our roof slabs. Let's go to the properties. And if we take a look at our run and rise, it shows all of these being a little bit different. So let's see what we've got for this one in here. If you notice, that tells us it's 4.5. That one is 4.5. 4.5. And this one should be 4.5 also. So they are all 4.5 in one. But let's see what happens if we modify the slope. What we may get is we might get some kind of a conflict in here in terms of how those are going to abut into each other. So let's go ahead and let's highlight all 4 of these and change the rise to 4 and see what happens. Right now you can tell what happened. So we've got a little bit of an issue. So we can't just change our slope that way once we've converted these to slabs. So what we need to do is we need to go ahead and we're going to delete these and we're going to have to redo it. And this is part of the design process that goes back and forth. If we go back to our elevations, we may not have known here that this was going to become an issue. Now if we had done this properly with our model, we could have caught this at the point where we had developed our A roof rather than A roof slab. But what we've done now is we've already taken it a little bit further, so we've got to fix this. So let's go ahead and let's see what we can do to fix this. So let's go back to our main level. I'm going to go ahead and delete these. And this was exactly the reason why we did not delete our A roof. We're going to go ahead and highlight that again. Let's go ahead and regen. Let's end object isolation. Let's go back to our 2D wireframe, and now we have our roof in here. Now, if we take this entire roof and we go ahead and change this to 4, okay, now we can take that, we can convert standard, okay. Let's go back to our layers. We've converted now to roof slab. We're going to go ahead and hide both of these. Let's make sure that that worked. Let's go ahead and make our A roof slab our current layer. And let's go and change our A roof and hide that. Now, unfortunately, we got to go through the same process that we did before. I'm going to go ahead and start with layer 0. I'm going to create my polyline, so we're going to do this again. Remember, it was from the edge of the stud wall, not the 4-inch brick wall. We also have to remember that we had a 2-foot overhang in the front. And now what we can do is highlight each one of those. We're going to trim, select our trimming edge, and click on that side. Let's go ahead and trim again. Highlight that, trim, select our trimming edge. We know we want that one done. All right, let's go ahead and highlight. This is the last one we want to do. We're going to trim, select our trimming edge, and click on there. And we're pretty well done with that. Let's go ahead and erase this. I'm going to go ahead and save that. And let's go ahead and let's go back to our elevations or our model, either one of the two, and let's see what happens. So we want to make sure we save that. We could do that right now, or let's just go ahead and let's finish up the upper. The upper is going to be a lot easier. There's very little to change in here. We would have exactly the same problem here that we did with the other one. So what we can do is we can go back to our A roof, turn it back on. Okay, that's fantastic. Now we're going to go ahead and here we're going to modify it. Let's highlight it first. Modify it here to 4. Okay, and we're going to highlight that and we're going to convert. Do OK. Let's go to our A roof slab, make that our current, and go back to our A roof. Turn off and freeze. Save our drawing, and let's go first to our model and reload. And as you can tell right there, now we've got a little bit more room to work with. Let's do our 3D orbit. I think that looks great. Okay, let's go ahead and save this drawing too. Now let's go to our elevations once this saves. And we're going to have to do the same thing. Reload. This should be identical to what we saw before. Now let's see what happens if we refresh. So let's go ahead and save this first, because we haven't saved it. This may not update. I'm going to highlight that, right click, and let's see, refresh, and there we go. We got a lot more room now to work with. Our flashing and trim work will work a lot better. Let's do that to each one of these elevations. Refresh, click, refresh, and refresh the last one. Let's go ahead and save this. And so even though it was a little bit more work, this is part of the design process. So once you find out that you may have some issues with this, very easy to come in and adjust it. You, of course, have to follow the procedure. Construct to views, and then begin to look at any of the other elements that may be affected with it. So this concludes our drawings of the base elevations. So this is another part of the puzzle that we're going to be putting together for our construction documents. What we're going to be doing for our following videos is we're going to start detailing and being a little bit more refined in terms of showing our trim work and doing additional detail work for these elevations. And we're going to do most of that in the model, but then we're going to go ahead and do some of that in our elevations right here.